From Tennessee.
Mr. President, I ask that the quorum call be vitiated.
Without objection.
Mr. President, it's my sad responsibility to announce that the former governor, Ned McWherter of Tennessee, has died this afternoon. Ned has many friends here in Washington, but he has a lot more in Tennessee. What symbolized Ned McWherter to me was a story that occurred to me when I was elected governor in 1978. I was a young Republican, about 37 years old. There hadn't been many Republican governors in Tennessee at that time. The whole state was one party. It was very democratic. Ned McWherter was the Speaker of the House. For those who know Ned McWherter, he was a big, burly, Hoss Cartwright sort of fellow. And he and the Lieutenant Governor, a Democrat, pretty well ran the Capitol. So shortly after I came in, the Capitol Hill media came up to Speaker Ned McWherter and said, "Well, Mr. Speaker, what are you going to do with this new young Republican governor?" And Speaker McWherter said, "I'm going to help him, because if he succeeds, our state succeeds." And for 8 years, as he was Speaker and I was governor, he did that. And the people of Tennessee apparently didn't mind it, because after I left, they elected him governor, and he served for 8 years. That sort of bipartisan cooperation was the way I learned about politics in Tennessee. Ned was a pretty thoroughgoing Democrat. He was one of President Clinton's closest friends and early allies. Democrats all around our country came to him for his homespun advice. He had no problem working hard during election time to put legislators who were Democratic in the place of Republicans who were already in their seats. That was not a problem for him. But in between elections, he knew what to do. We would meet in the governor's office every Tuesday morning, and we'd go over the issues, the Republican governor and the Democratic leaders. And then we would decide what to do. And if I came up with a better schools program, why, the Democrats would come up with an even better schools program. So when Tennessee became the first state to pay teachers more for teaching well on a statewide basis in 1984, I made the proposal. But it was the result of a bipartisan education commission that Speaker McWherter and Governor Wilder, both Democrats, and I jointly agreed on. And when the legislature agreed to it, I may have proposed it as governor, but it was amended by the Weakley County Amendment, which was the home county of Speaker McWherter. In other words, it was his willingness to fashion a consensus bill on a really revolutionary idea at the time: reward outstanding teaching by paying them more for teaching well. He did the same thing when it came to highways and roads. Tennessee had one of the worst road systems in the country in the early 80s. By the time he and I were finished, it had what the truckers called the best. We had 3 big road programs. We increased revenues to pay for it, so we didn't run up any debt for the state. And in every case, Speaker McWherter supported and made sure that legislation passed. When we became a state that attracted Japanese industry, he knew that the commitments that I made as a Republican governor, he would fulfill as a Democratic leader of the House of Representatives, and that he would continue as a Democratic governor. It was a seamless transition. The same was true with the automobile industry when it began to come to Tennessee. People began to look around for a central location with a right-to-work law and good working people. And through a succession of governors, Republican, Democrat, we worked together to do that. And of special interest it might be to Washington, D.C. right now. Through all those Democratic and Republican governors, we agreed that our state would have almost no debt. That's right, under Governor McWherter and Speaker McWherter, our state had almost no debt. If we needed something, we paid for it, and as a result, we have low taxes. Ned McWherter was one of the finest public servants that I've ever had a chance to work with. He became a close friend. He had an infectious personality and great sense of humor. The last visits I had with him included the inauguration of the new governor, Bill Haslam. Ned McWherter, who is 80 years old, and Jim Haslam, the father of the new governor, are the same age and the best of friends. Their son competed for the right to be the new governor of Tennessee. Governor McWherter and Jim Haslam, after the election, were the best of friends. That's the kind of person Ned McWherter was. There are a lot of people in our state who come in and out of politics, and maybe they're appreciated, maybe they're not. Only a few leave a lasting impression. Ned McWherter will be among the very few that leave the most impression. And part of it is his big, burly, infectious, lovable personality. Part of it was his good sense of politics and openness around the state capitol. But a lot of it was his willingness to say to people like a new young governor of the opposite party, I'm going to help you succeed, because if you succeed, our state succeeds. Governor McWherter and I talked many times. I talked with him most recently about a week ago. He was going to see his doctor again to find out whether he said he had a short fuse or a long fuse. Apparently he had a short fuse. He didn't have much life left in him, although he may not have known it, or perhaps he did. He used to joke with us and say that the size of the crowd at your funeral will depend a lot upon the weather. And I think what all of us in Tennessee will say to Ned McWherter is the size of the crowd at his funeral will have nothing to do with the weather, because I imagine it'll be standing room only with people pouring out of the back doors. So we're sad he's gone, but it's been 80 remarkable years. A governor who never graduated from college is the governor who had the courage to put into our state law the Sanders model for relating student achievement to teacher performance, helping our state win this administration's Race to the Top award some 15 or 20 years later. He's made a real contribution to our state. He's got a big place in all of our hearts. I'm sad to report that he's gone, but it's an important time to celebrate the life of a public servant whose lessons of how to achieve consensus and still be a good politician would be a good lesson for everyone in Washington, D.C. Mr. President, I yield the floor. I notice the absence of quorum, and I ask that the time be equally divided between the parties.
Without objection, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.